Chapter 3. Old Prince Nicholas Bolkonsky received a letter from Prince Vasily in November, 1805, announcing that he and his son would be paying him a visit. "I am starting on a journey of inspection, and of course I shall think nothing of an extra 70 miles to come and see you at the same time, my honored benefactor," wrote Prince Vasily. "My son Anatole is accompanying me on his way to the army, so I hope you will allow him personally to express the deep respect that, emulating his father, he feels for you. It seems that there will be no need to bring Mary out, suitors are coming to us of their own accord," incautiously remarked the little princess on hearing the news. Prince Nicholas frowned, but said nothing. A fortnight after the letter Prince Vasily's servants came one evening in advance of him, and he and his son arrived next day. Old Bolkonsky had always had a poor opinion of Prince Vasily's character, but more so recently, since in the new reigns of Paul and Alexander Prince Vasily had risen to high position and honors. And now, from the hints contained in his letter and given by the little princess, he saw which way the wind was blowing, and his low opinion changed into a feeling of contemptuous ill will. He snorted whenever he mentioned him. On the day of Prince Vasily's arrival, Prince Bolkonsky was particularly discontented and out of temper. Whether he was in a bad temper because Prince Vasily was coming, or whether his being in a bad temper made him specially annoyed at Prince Vasily's visit, he was in a bad temper, and in the morning Tikhon had already advised the architect not to go to the prince with his report. "Do you hear how he's walking?" said Tikhon, drawing the architect's attention to the sound of the prince's footsteps. "Stepping flat on his heels, we know what that means." However, at 9 o'clock the prince, in his velvet coat with a sable collar and cap, went out for his usual walk. It had snowed the day before and the path to the hothouse, along which the prince was in the habit of walking, had been swept, the marks of the broom were still visible in the snow and a shovel had been left sticking in one of the soft snowbanks that bordered both sides of the path. The prince went through the conservatories, the serfs' quarters, and the outbuildings, frowning and silent. "Can a sleigh pass?" he asked his overseer, a venerable man, resembling his master in manners and looks, who was accompanying him back to the house. "The snow is deep. I am having the avenue swept, your honor." The prince bowed his head and went up to the porch. "God be thanked," thought the overseer, "the storm has blown over. It would have been hard to drive up, your honor," he added. "I heard, your honor, that a minister is coming to visit your honor." The prince turned round to the overseer and fixed his eyes on him, frowning. "What? A minister? What minister? Who gave orders?" he said in his shrill, harsh voice. "The road is not swept for the princess my daughter, but for a minister. For me, there are no ministers." "Your honor, I thought." "You thought," shouted the prince, his words coming more and more rapidly and indistinctly. "You thought. Rascals. Blackguards. I'll teach you to think," and lifting his stick he swung it and would have hit Alpátych, the overseer, had not the latter instinctively avoided the blow. "Thought. Blackguards," shouted the prince rapidly. But although Alpátych, frightened at his own temerity in avoiding the stroke, came up to the prince, bowing his bald head resignedly before him, or perhaps for that very reason, the prince, though he continued to shout, "Blackguards. Throw the snow back on the road," did not lift his stick again but hurried into the house. Before dinner, Princess Mary and Mademoiselle Bourienne, who knew that the prince was in a bad humor, stood awaiting him, Mademoiselle Bourienne with a radiant face that said, "I know nothing, I am the same as usual," and Princess Mary pale, frightened, and with downcast eyes. What she found hardest to bear was to know that on such occasions she ought to behave like Mademoiselle Bourienne, but could not. She thought, "If I seem not to notice he will think that I do not sympathize with him, if I seem sad and out of spirits myself, he will say, as he has done before, that I'm in the dumps." The prince looked at his daughter's frightened face and snorted. "Fool, or dummy," he muttered. "And the other one is not here. They've been telling tales," he thought, referring to the little princess who was not in the dining room. "Where is the princess?" he asked. "Hiding. She is not very well," answered Mademoiselle Bourienne with a bright smile, "so she won't come down. It is natural in her state." Hm. Muttered the prince, sitting down. His plate seemed to him not quite clean, and pointing to a spot he flung it away. Tikhon caught it and handed it to a footman. The little princess was not unwell, but had such an overpowering fear of the prince that, hearing he was in a bad humor, she had decided not to appear. "I am afraid for the baby," she said to Mademoiselle Bourienne. "Heaven knows what a fright might do." In general at Bald Hills the little princess lived in constant fear, and with a sense of antipathy to the old prince which she did not realize because the fear was so much the stronger feeling. The prince reciprocated this antipathy, but it was overpowered by his contempt for her. When the little princess had grown accustomed to life at Bald Hills, she took a special fancy to Mademoiselle Bourienne, spent whole days with her, asked her to sleep in her room, and often talked with her about the old prince and criticized him. "So we are to have visitors, mon prince," remarked Mademoiselle Bourienne, unfolding her white napkin with her rosy fingers. "His Excellency Prince Vasily Kuragin and his son, I understand," she said inquiringly. His Excellency is a puppy. I got him his appointment in the service," said the prince disdainfully. "Why his son is coming I don't understand. Perhaps Princess Elizabeth and Princess Mary know. I don't want him." He looked at his blushing daughter. "Are you unwell today?" Afraid of the minister, as that idiot Alpatik called him this morning?" "No, mon père." Though Mademoiselle Bourienne had been so unsuccessful in her choice of a subject, she did not stop talking, but chattered about the conservatories and the beauty of a flower that had just opened, and after the soup the prince became more genial. After dinner, he went to see his daughter-in-law. The little princess was sitting at a small table, chattering with Masha, her maid. She grew pale on seeing her father-in-law. She was much altered. She was now plain rather than pretty. Her cheeks had sunk, her lip was drawn up, and her eyes drawn down. "Yes, I feel a kind of oppression," she said in reply to the prince's question as to how she felt. "Do you want anything?" "No, merci, mon père." "Well, all right, all right." He left the room and went to the waiting room where Alpatik stood with bowed head. "Has the snow been shoveled back?" "Yes, Your Excellency." "Forgive me for heaven's sake. It was only my stupidity." All right," interrupted the prince, and laughing his unnatural way, he stretched out his hand for Alpatik to kiss, and then proceeded to his study. Prince Vasily arrived that evening. He was met in the avenue by coachmen and footmen, who, with loud shouts, dragged his sleighs up to one of the lodges over the road purposely laden with snow. Prince Vasily and Anatole had separate rooms assigned to them. Anatole, having taken off his overcoat, sat with arms akimbo before a table on a corner of which he smilingly and absent-mindedly fixed his large and handsome eyes. He regarded his whole life as a continual round of amusement which someone for some reason had to provide for him. And he looked on this visit to a churlish old man and a rich and ugly heiress in the same way. All this might, he thought, turn out very well and amusingly. And why not marry her if she really has so much money? That never does any harm, thought Anatole. He shaved and scented himself with the care and elegance which had become habitual to him and, his handsome head held high, entered his father's room with the good-humored and victorious air natural to him. Prince Vasily's two valets were busy dressing him, and he looked round with much animation and cheerfully nodded to his son as the latter entered, as if to say, "Yes, that's how I want you to look." "I say, father, joking apart, is she very hideous?" Anatole asked, as if continuing a conversation the subject of which had often been mentioned during the journey. "Enough. What nonsense. Above all, try to be respectful and cautious with the old prince." "If he starts a row I'll go away," said Prince Anatole. "I can't bear those old men." Remember, for you everything depends on this." In the meantime, not only was it known in the maidservants' rooms that the minister and his son had arrived, but the appearance of both had been minutely described. Princess Mary was sitting alone in her room, vainly trying to master her agitation. "Why did they write? Why did Lise tell me about it? It can never happen," she said, looking at herself in the glass. How shall I enter the drawing room? Even if I like him I can't now be myself with him. The mere thought of her father's look filled her with terror. The little princess and Mademoiselle Bourienne had already received from Masha, the lady's maid, the necessary report of how handsome the minister's son was, with his rosy cheeks and dark eyebrows, and with what difficulty the father had dragged his legs upstairs while the son had followed him like an eagle, 3 steps at a time. Having received this information, the little princess and Mademoiselle Bourienne, whose chattering voices had reached her from the corridor, went into Princess Mary's room. "You know they've come, Marie," said the little princess, waddling in, and sinking heavily into an armchair. She was no longer in the loose gown she generally wore in the morning, but had on one of her best dresses. Her hair was carefully done and her face was animated, which, however, did not conceal its sunken and faded outlines. Dressed as she used to be in Petersburg society, it was still more noticeable how much plainer she had become. Some unobtrusive touch had been added to Mademoiselle Bourienne's toilet which rendered her fresh and pretty face yet more attractive. "What? Are you going to remain as you are, dear princess?" she began. "They'll be announcing that the gentlemen are in the drawing room and we shall have to go down, and you have not smartened yourself up at all." The little princess got up, rang for the maid, and hurriedly and merrily began to devise and carry out a plan of how Princess Mary should be dressed. Princess Mary's self-esteem was wounded by the fact that the arrival of a suitor agitated her, and still more so by both her companions not having the least conception that it could be otherwise. To tell them that she felt ashamed for herself and for them would be to betray her agitation, while to decline their offers to dress her would prolong their banter and insistence. She flushed, her beautiful eyes grew dim, red blotches came on her face, and it took on the unattractive martyr-like expression it so often wore, as she submitted herself to Mademoiselle Bourienne and Lise. Both these women quite sincerely tried to make her look pretty. She was so plain that neither of them could think of her as a rival, so they began dressing her with perfect sincerity, and with the naive and firm conviction women have that dress can make a face pretty. "No really, my dear, this dress is not pretty," said Lise, looking sideways at Princess Mary from a little distance. "You have a maroon dress, have it fetched." "Really? You know the fate of your whole life may be at stake. But this one is too light, it's not becoming." It was not the dress, but the face and whole figure of Princess Mary that was not pretty, but neither Mademoiselle Bourienne nor the little princess felt this. They still thought that if a blue ribbon were placed in the hair combed up, and the blue scarf arranged lower on the best maroon dress, and so on, all would be well. They forgot that the frightened face and the figure could not be altered, and that however they might change the setting and adornment of that face, it would still remain piteous and plain. After 2 or 3 changes to which Princess Mary meekly submitted, just as her hair had been arranged on the top of her head, a style that quite altered and spoiled her looks, and she had put on a maroon dress with a pale blue scarf, the little princess walked twice round her, now adjusting a fold of the dress with her little hand, now arranging the scarf and looking at her with her head bent first on one side and then on the other. "No, it will not do," she said decidedly, clasping her hands. "No, Mary, really this dress does not suit you. I prefer you in your little grey everyday dress. Now please, do it for my sake. Katie," she said to the maid, "bring the princess her grey dress, and you'll see, Mademoiselle Bourienne, how I shall arrange it," she added, smiling with a foretaste of artistic pleasure. But when Katie brought the required dress, Princess Mary remained sitting motionless before the glass, looking at her face, and saw in the mirror her eyes full of tears and her mouth quivering, ready to burst into sobs. "Come, dear princess," said Mademoiselle Bourienne, "just one more little effort." The little princess, taking the dress from the maid, came up to Princess Mary. "Well, now we'll arrange something quite simple and becoming," she said. The 3 voices, hers, Mademoiselle Bourienne's, and Katie's, who was laughing at something, mingled in a merry sound, like the chirping of birds. "No, leave me alone," said Princess Mary. Her voice sounded so serious and so sad that the chirping of the birds was silenced at once. They looked at the beautiful, large, thoughtful eyes full of tears and of thoughts, gazing shiningly and imploringly at them, and understood that it was useless and even cruel to insist. At least, change your coiffure, said the little princess. Didn't I tell you, she went on, turning reproachfully to Mademoiselle Bourienne, Mary's is a face which such a coiffure does not suit in the least. Not in the least. Please change it. Leave me alone, please leave me alone. It is all quite the same to me, answered a voice struggling with tears. Mademoiselle Bourienne and the little princess had to own to themselves that Princess Mary in this guise looked very plain, worse than usual, but it was too late. She was looking at them with an expression they both knew, an expression thoughtful and sad. This expression in Princess Mary did not frighten them, she never inspired fear in anyone, but they knew that when it appeared on her face, she became mute and was not to be shaken in her determination. You will change it, won't you? Said Lise. And as Princess Mary gave no answer, she left the room. Princess Mary was left alone. She did not comply with Lise's request, she not only left her hair as it was, but did not even look in her glass. Letting her arms fall helplessly, she sat with downcast eyes and pondered. A husband, a man, a strong dominant and strangely attractive being rose in her imagination, and carried her into a totally different happy world of his own. She fancied a child, her own, such as she had seen the day before in the arms of her nurse's daughter, at her own breast, the husband standing by and gazing tenderly at her and the child. But no, it is impossible, I am too ugly, she thought. Please come to tea. The prince will be out in a moment, came the maid's voice at the door. She roused herself and felt appalled at what she had been thinking, and before going down she went into the room where the icons hung and, her eyes fixed on the dark face of a large icon of the Saviour lit by a lamp, she stood before it with folded hands for a few moments. A painful doubt filled her soul. Could the joy of love, of earthly love for a man, be for her? In her thoughts of marriage Princess Mary dreamed of happiness and of children, but her strongest, most deeply hidden longing was for earthly love. The more she tried to hide this feeling from others and even from herself, the stronger it grew. "O God," she said, "how am I to stifle in my heart these temptations of the devil? How am I to renounce forever these vile fancies, so as peacefully to fulfill thy will?" And scarcely had she put that question than God gave her the answer in her own heart. "Desire nothing for thyself, seek nothing, be not anxious or envious. Man's future and thy own fate must remain hidden from thee, but live so that thou mayest be ready for anything. If it be God's will to prove thee in the duties of marriage, be ready to fulfill his will." With this consoling thought, but yet with a hope for the fulfillment of her forbidden earthly longing, Princess Mary sighed, and having crossed herself went down, thinking neither of her gown and coiffure nor of how she would go in nor of what she would say. What could all that matter in comparison with the will of God, without whose care not a hair of man's head can fall? Chapter 4. When Princess Mary came down, Prince Vasily and his son were already in the drawing-room, talking to the little princess and Mademoiselle Bourienne. When she entered with her heavy step, treading on her heels, the gentleman and Mademoiselle Bourienne rose and the little princess, indicating her to the gentleman, said, "Voilà Marie." Princess Mary saw them all and saw them in detail. She saw Prince Vasily's face, serious for an instant at the sight of her, but immediately smiling again, and the little princess curiously noting the impression Marie produced on the visitors. And she saw Mademoiselle Bourienne, with her ribbon and pretty face, and her unusually animated look which was fixed on him, but him she could not see, she only saw something large, brilliant, and handsome moving toward her as she entered the room. Prince Vasily approached first, and she kissed the bold forehead that bent over her hand and answered his question by saying that, on the contrary, she remembered him quite well. Then Anatole came up to her. She still could not see him. She only felt a soft hand taking hers firmly, and she touched with her lips a white forehead, over which was beautiful light brown hair smelling of pomade. When she looked up at him she was struck by his beauty. Anatole stood with his right thumb under a button of his uniform, his chest expanded and his back drawn in, slightly swinging one foot, and, with his head a little bent, looked with beaming face at the princess without speaking and evidently not thinking about her at all. Anatole was not quick-witted, nor ready or eloquent in conversation, but he had the faculty, so invaluable in society, of composure and imperturbable self-possession. If a man lacking in self-confidence remains dumb on a first introduction and betrays a consciousness of the impropriety of such silence and an anxiety to find something to say, the effect is bad. But Anatole was dumb, swung his foot, and smilingly examined the princess' hair. It was evident that he could be silent in this way for a very long time. If anyone finds this silence inconvenient, let him talk, but I don't want to, he seemed to say. Besides this, in his behavior to women Anatole had a manner which particularly inspires in them curiosity, awe, and even love, a supercilious consciousness of his own superiority. It was as if he said to them, I know you, but why should I bother about you? You'd be only too glad, of course. Perhaps he did not really think this when he met women, even probably he did not, for in general he thought very little, but his looks and manner gave that impression. The princess felt this, and as if wishing to show him that she did not even dare expect to interest him, she turned to his father. The conversation was general and animated, thanks to Princess Liza's voice and little downy lip that lifted over her white teeth. She met Prince Vasili with that playful manner often employed by lively chatty people, and consisting in the assumption that between the person they so address and themselves there are some semi-private, long-established jokes and amusing reminiscences, though no such reminiscences really exist, just as none existed in this case. Prince Vasili readily adopted her tone and the little princess also drew Anatole, whom she hardly knew, into these amusing recollections of things that had never occurred. Mademoiselle Bourienne also shared them and even Princess Mary felt herself pleasantly made to share in these merry reminiscences. Here at least we shall have the benefit of your company all to ourselves, dear prince, said the little princess, of course, in French, to Prince Vasili. It's not as at Annette's * receptions where you always ran away, you remember cette chère Annette. * Anna Pavlovna. Ah, but you won't talk politics to me like Annette. And our little tea table? Oh, yes. Why is it you were never at Annette's? The little princess asked Anatole. Ah, I know, she said with a sly glance, your brother Hippolyte told me about your goings-on. Oh, and she shook her finger at him, I have even heard of your doings in Paris. And didn't Hippolyte tell you? Asked Prince Vasili, turning to his son and seizing the little princess' arm as if she would have run away and he had just managed to catch her. Didn't he tell you how he himself was pining for the dear princess, and how she showed him the door? Oh, she is a pearl among women, princess, he added, turning to Princess Mary. When Paris was mentioned, Mademoiselle Bourienne for her part seized the opportunity of joining in the general current of recollections. She took the liberty of inquiring whether it was long since Anatole had left Paris and how he had liked that city. Anatole answered the Frenchwoman very readily and, looking at her with a smile, talked to her about her native land. When he saw the pretty little Bourienne, Anatole came to the conclusion that he would not find Bald Hills dull either. Not at all bad, he thought, examining her, not at all bad, that little companion. I hope she will bring her along with her when we're married, la petite est gentille. Asterisk. The little one is charming. The old prince dressed leisurely in his study, frowning and considering what he was to do. The coming of these visitors annoyed him. What are Prince Vasili and that son of his to me? Prince Vasili is a shallow braggart and his son, no doubt, is a fine specimen, he grumbled to himself. What angered him was that the coming of these visitors revived in his mind an unsettled question he always tried to stifle, one about which he always deceived himself. The question was whether he could ever bring himself to part from his daughter and give her to a husband. The prince never directly asked himself that question, knowing beforehand that he would have to answer it justly, and justice clashed not only with his feelings but with the very possibility of life. Life without Princess Mary, little as he seemed to value her, was unthinkable to him. And why should she marry, he thought. To be unhappy for certain. There's Lise, married to Andrew. A better husband one would think could hardly be found nowadays, but is she contented with her lot? And who would marry Marie for love? Plain and awkward. They'll take her for her connections and wealth. Are there no women living unmarried, and even the happier for it? So thought Prince Bolkonsky while dressing, and yet the question he was always putting off demanded an immediate answer. Prince Vasily had brought his son with the evident intention of proposing, and today or tomorrow he would probably ask for an answer. His birth and position in society were not bad. Well, I've nothing against it, the prince said to himself, but he must be worthy of her. And that is what we shall see. That is what we shall see. That is what we shall see, he added aloud. He entered the drawing room with his usual alert step, glancing rapidly round the company. He noticed the change in the little princess dress, Mademoiselle Bourienne's ribbon, Princess Mary's unbecoming coiffure, Mademoiselle Bourienne's and Anatole's smiles, and the loneliness of his daughter amid the general conversation. Got herself up like a fool, he thought, looking irritably at her. She is shameless, and he ignores her. He went straight up to Prince Vasily. Well. How d'ye do? How d'ye do? Glad to see you. Friendship laughs at distance, began Prince Vasily in his usual rapid, self-confident, familiar tone. Here is my second son, please love and befriend him. Prince Bolkonsky surveyed Anatole. Fine young fellow. Fine young fellow, he said. Well, come and kiss me, and he offered his cheek. Anatole kissed the old man, and looked at him with curiosity and perfect composure, waiting for a display of the eccentricities his father had told him to expect. Prince Bolkonsky sat down in his usual place in the corner of the sofa and, drawing up an armchair for Prince Vasily, pointed to it and began questioning him about political affairs and news. He seemed to listen attentively to what Prince Vasily said, but kept glancing at Princess Mary. And so they are writing from Potsdam already, he said, repeating Prince Vasily's last words. Then rising, he suddenly went up to his daughter. Is it for visitors you've got yourself up like that, said he. Fine, very fine. You have done up your hair in this new way for the visitors, and before the visitors I tell you that in future you are never to dare to change your way of dress without my consent. It was my fault, mon père, interceded the little princess, with a blush. You must do as you please, said Prince Bolkonsky, bowing to his daughter-in-law, but she need not make a fool of herself, she's plain enough as it is. And he sat down again, paying no more attention to his daughter, who was reduced to tears. On the contrary, that coiffure suits the princess very well, said Prince Vasily. Now you, young prince, what's your name, said Prince Bolkonsky, turning to Anatole, come here, let us talk and get acquainted. Now the fun begins, thought Anatole, sitting down with a smile beside the old prince. Well, my dear boy, I hear you've been educated abroad, not taught to read and write by the deacon, like your father and me. Now tell me, my dear boy, are you serving in the Horse Guards? Asked the old man, scrutinizing Anatole closely and intently. No, I have been transferred to the line, said Anatole, hardly able to restrain his laughter. Ah! That's a good thing. So, my dear boy, you wish to serve the Tsar and the country? It is wartime. Such a fine fellow must serve. Well, are you off to the front? No, Prince, our regiment has gone to the front, but I am attached. What is it I am attached to, Papa? Said Anatole, turning to his father with a laugh. A splendid soldier, splendid. What am I attached to? Ha, 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 laughed Prince Bolkonsky, and Anatole laughed still louder. Suddenly Prince Bolkonsky frowned. You may go, he said to Anatole. Anatole returned smiling to the ladies. And so you've had him educated abroad, Prince Vasily, haven't you? Said the old prince to Prince Vasily. I have done my best for him, and I can assure you the education there is much better than ours. Yes, everything is different nowadays, everything is changed. The lad's a fine fellow, a fine fellow. Well, come with me now. He took Prince Vasily's arm and led him to his study. As soon as they were alone together, Prince Vasily announced his hopes and wishes to the old prince. Well, do you think I shall prevent her, that I can't part from her? Said the old prince angrily. What an idea! I'm ready for it tomorrow. Only let me tell you, I want to know my son-in-law better. You know my principles, everything aboveboard. I will ask her tomorrow in your presence. If she is willing, then he can stay on. He can stay and I'll see. The old prince snorted. Let her marry, it's all the same to me, he screamed in the same piercing tone as when parting from his son. I will tell you frankly, said Prince Vasily in the tone of a crafty man convinced of the futility of being cunning with so keen-sighted a companion. You know, you see right through people. Anatole is no genius, but he is an honest, good-hearted lad, an excellent son or kinsman. All right, we'll see. As always happens when women lead lonely lives for any length of time without male society, on Anatole's appearance all the 3 women of Prince Bolkonsky's household felt that their life had not been real till then. Their powers of reasoning, feeling, and observing immediately increased tenfold, and their life, which seemed to have been passed in darkness, was suddenly lit up by a new brightness, full of significance. Princess Mary grew quite unconscious of her face and coiffure. The handsome open face of the man who might perhaps be her husband absorbed all her attention. He seemed to her kind, brave, determined, manly, and magnanimous. She felt convinced of that. Thousands of dreams of a future family life continually rose in her imagination. She drove them away and tried to conceal them. But am I not too cold with him, thought the princess. I try to be reserved because in the depth of my soul I feel too near to him already, but then he cannot know what I think of him and may imagine that I do not like him. And Princess Mary tried, but could not manage, to be cordial to her new guest. Poor girl, she's devilish ugly, thought Anatole. Mademoiselle Bourienne, also roused to great excitement by Anatole's arrival, thought in another way. Of course, she, a handsome young woman without any definite position, without relations, or even a country, did not intend to devote her life to serving Prince Bolkonsky, to reading aloud to him and being friends with Princess Mary. Mademoiselle Bourienne had long been waiting for a Russian prince who, able to appreciate at a glance her superiority to the plain, badly dressed, ungainly Russian princesses, would fall in love with her and carry her off, and here at last was a Russian prince. Mademoiselle Bourienne knew a story, heard from her aunt but finished in her own way, which she liked to repeat to herself. It was the story of a girl who had been seduced, and to whom her poor mother, sa pauvre mère, appeared, and reproached her for yielding to a man without being married. Mademoiselle Bourienne was often touched to tears as in imagination she told this story to him, her seducer. And now he, a real Russian prince, had appeared. He would carry her away and then sa pauvre mère would appear and he would marry her. So her future shaped itself in Mademoiselle Bourienne's head at the very time she was talking to Anatole about Paris. It was not calculation that guided her, she did not even for a moment consider what she should do, but all this had long been familiar to her, and now that Anatole had appeared it just grouped itself around him and she wished and tried to please him as much as possible. The little princess, like an old war horse that hears the trumpet, unconsciously and quite forgetting her condition, prepared for the familiar gallop of coquetry, without any ulterior motive or any struggle, but with naive and light-hearted gaiety. Although in female society Anatole usually assumed the role of a man tired of being run after by women, his vanity was flattered by the spectacle of his power over these 3 women. Besides that, he was beginning to feel for the pretty and provocative Mademoiselle Bourienne that passionate animal feeling which was apt to master him with great suddenness and prompt him to the coarsest and most reckless actions. After tea, the company went into the sitting room and Princess Mary was asked to play on the clavichord. Anatole, laughing and in high spirits, came and leaned on his elbows, facing her and beside Mademoiselle Bourienne. Princess Mary felt his look with a painfully joyous emotion. Her favorite sonata bore her into a most intimately poetic world and the look she felt upon her made that world still more poetic. But Anatole's expression, though his eyes were fixed on her, referred not to her but to the movements of Mademoiselle Bourienne's little foot, which he was then touching with his own under the clavichord. Mademoiselle Bourienne was also looking at Princess Mary, and in her lovely eyes there was a look of fearful joy and hope that was also new to the princess. How she loves me, thought Princess Mary. How happy I am now, and how happy I may be with such a friend and such a husband. Husband? Can it be possible, she thought, not daring to look at his face, but still feeling his eyes gazing at her. In the evening, after supper, when all were about to retire, Anatole kissed Princess Mary's hand. She did not know how she found the courage, but she looked straight into his handsome face as it came near to her short-sighted eyes. Turning from Princess Mary, he went up and kissed Mademoiselle Bourienne's hand. This was not etiquette, but then he did everything so simply and with such assurance. Mademoiselle Bourienne flushed, and gave the princess a frightened look. What delicacy, thought the princess. Is it possible that Amélie, Mademoiselle Bourienne, thinks I could be jealous of her, and not value her pure affection and devotion to me? She went up to her and kissed her warmly. Anatole went up to kiss the little princess' hand. No. 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 When your father writes to tell me that you are behaving well, I will give you my hand to kiss. Not till then, she said. And smilingly raising a finger at him, she left the room.